experience it, that's how you grow and develop. The fixed mindset says go on this train track and do it this way.
Yep.
The growth mindset says throw them in the pool. I got the answers, but I want them to go find them themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Break It Down with Braydon. Super excited. I've got the boys on here from Everyday Investments Realty.
It's a mouthful.
Brett
huh?
Angner, Brennan Clark, and Henry Carbeck. Thanks for joining me today, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks
We're
for
happy to
having
be
us.
on
Thanks
here.
for having us. We're excited. We love GAT.
I love it. I love it.
We appreciate it. Love your digs here, too. It's
Thank you
pretty
very
solid.
much. Thank you very much. Brett, I know you're the founder. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the company, how you started it, and how you got to where you're at today?
Sure. So graduated from Creighton University.
Okay.
Was lucky enough to go cum laude there and watch 3 NCAA tournaments. I was mostly a bench warmer there at Creighton University back in the Kyle Korver days, for those who know him. Migrated down here in 2003. Got a job with Krispy Kreme, a big Creighton booster, and stumbled upon this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Okay.
And so I was grinding away. My dad's best friend's father was the original McDonald's franchisee in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh, no way.
So I thought franchising would be my way of life, working big hours, getting nice bonuses. Read this book by Mr. Kawasaki and realized that I was the poor dad in the book. And so was my dad, who was a great engineer back home. We have a 75-year-old business,
Okay.
but he was the poor dad. And read this book. I needed that. We didn't call it a side hustle in 2003. You know, when you guys were in grade school or however old you were, but we called this side action or some other opportunity to create wealth. So picked up 16 residential properties when I was 24 years old with a bunch of my college teammates.
Okay.
Didn't have the greatest representation on the purchases, buying $400,000 or $500,000 houses. We're getting a washer and dryer from our agent who could barely show up on time for the tours. And I got smart through that Creighton education and said, maybe we should do this ourselves. So I got my license. I started doing the leasing, management, and all the representation of my group at like 24, 25 years old. Still had my day job. And my side hustle was nights and weekends driving around people to buy residential real estate, simultaneously running our investment portfolio. At that point, I had 3 roommates. I think that's back in trend now, maybe not for you guys, but a lot of younger guys. So I had 3 roommates. They were paying my mortgage at the house.
Yep.
I basically was posting signs in the ground, using Craigslist, picking up tenants, screening people. And at that point, I learned a lot. I had no money basically. We basically took any tenant we could, and there were some good outcomes there, and there were some bad outcomes there. But all my strife and all the risk and all the stress when I was young bore EIR.
Yep.
18 years later. So lots changed. I took another job running a huge commercial real estate portfolio for a family in town. Ran different facets of their business, learned everything about commercial real estate. So imagine I got this residential portfolio,
Yep.
and in parallel, I'm learning how to run and operate commercial real estate for profit. So they had flex buildings, industrial buildings, office, retail, you name it. And we had in-house leasing, construction management, property management. We represented buyers and sellers. And I did that for 9 years and loved it. And honestly, EIR wouldn't be what it is today without what I learned from them. But also, I tried to bring the EIR model into their real estate portfolio
Okay.
to help build their third-party services. And they weren't interested in that as much as what I was providing them at that time. So we amicably split, and 6 years later, I'm hanging out with these young guys.
I love it.
Yeah. So
And so kind of where did you make the difference between what you wanted to separate yourself from other brokerages? Like, how do you kind
Sure.
of see?
So that's a great question. I hope a lot of the other brokerages aren't watching this, or agents, and if so, I apologize in advance. But we're the antithesis of commercial and residential brokerage services. So I was on the ownership side to start off. So I didn't grow up in a cubicle, which is no big deal. I didn't grow up cold calling, canvassing. I grew up understanding how to build and operate real estate for profit. So what we're looking to do is to educate our customers, our agents, et cetera, on every facet of the business instead of you're being told you're an office specialist at 24 years old. You're in a 10 by 10 or 6 by 4 cube. You're not an office specialist. You're calling 100 people that the older broker told you to call, just like the financial planning stuff, et cetera. We didn't want to be volume based. We wanted to add value. We wanted to be partners. We wanted to teach people or hang out with highly educated residential and commercial customers that understood what they needed, and they needed a partner who could inform them and take care of them. So it's kind of the reverse of what our business is.
Yeah. So doesn't matter what they're looking for, residentially or commercially, you're able to help them.
Absolutely. And so it's more about what do they need instead of projecting out what we think we're all about. So a lot of agents and brokerages, they want to preach and sell who they think they are. Well, who you should be is the best representative for your customer based on what they need at that moment.
Yep.
Not the luxury agent, not the industrial expert. That's all kind of made up marketing mumbo jumbo stuff as far as EIR is concerned.
Love it. Brennan, what's your role there?
Yeah, so I came in as an agent for EIR roughly a year and a half ago. Moved from Denver as I right after I graduated from University of Kansas. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Started networking when I moved out to Scottsdale, and got in touch with Brett. And at the time, I was getting my real estate license, so I was just getting into real estate, and he was able to take me on and hire me. Before I had my
story's a little better than that. Story's a little bit better than that. He didn't network in Scottsdale to find me.
Before I met Brett, when I met Brett, I didn't have my license yet, so they still had the property management side. And he was sending, I remember my first day, I had got probably 40 bags of keys. And he's like, "You're in charge of all our residential properties that we're managing." And I'm like, all right. So I was on call basically for 3 months for all our tenants that we had.
Awesome.
As I'm still getting my real estate license, it took a little longer than expected.
What was the worst call you got?
This is a funny story. So a random Saturday, I think it was a property off 7th Avenue in, I don't know, Camelback or something. And Saturday, obviously hanging out with some friends, drinking some beer, hanging out, and we get a call that there was a leak at one of our properties, or a hose or washer hose came out.
Yep.
And I get a text from my boss, and he was like, "You got to go down there." And I'm like, "I've been drinking. I can't go." He's like, "Well, get an Uber." So I literally got an Uber because I had the keys to go let in the plumber to go do it. But it was just basically 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, and I had to go take care of this issue.
I may have been "I'm drinking too, but I'm home with my wife and my 4 kids."
Yep.
So
Guess
get
what
an
you're
Uber.
going.
Yeah.
I'm going because I was a new guy.
And I will say, everything that I've subjected these to, that's another thing about our platform. Everything I've subjected these guys to, I've done.
Yep.
I've never asked them to do anything that I didn't do. And the more they learn about how the world works and how managing real estate works and how people work and how they experience it, that's how you grow and develop. The fixed mindset says go on this train track and do it this way.
Yep.
The growth mindset says throw them in the pool. I got the answers, but I want them to go find them themselves.
It seems like we're kind of similar in that way, where we're okay, we need to experience it first before we're actually mentoring and advising people how to actually do it themselves. Because otherwise, if I don't know what I'm actually doing myself, then how can I teach you? And so, even with how you've invested in all the properties before, it's okay, I actually know what I'm doing investing wise. I can coach you how to invest.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Henry, how about yourself?
So I came on about a couple months after Brendan did. Brett had done a couple deals with my father-in-law. And I figured anyone that can put up with him, fine partner to work with. And, I came on and Brendan handed me those bags of keys, patted me on the back and said, good luck. And as of today, I am the Director of Operations and Transaction Coordinator for EIR. So I'm actively dealing with all of the different transactions we got going on and helping Brett out in the day-to-day and just handling all that different stuff and property management as well.
So these guys aren't good. When they're young, you don't, you want to tell the story fast. When you're old like me, you want to tell the whole story.
Yep.
So this guy didn't
give us some in-depth.
This guy didn't
elaborate on it, would you?
This guy didn't network with me in Scottsdale. This guy was up in Eugene, Oregon, hanging out with my former college coaches, right, at Creighton, who are the head and assistant coach at Oregon. And he's saying he's moving to Scottsdale. And my assistant coach calls me and said, "Hey, there's this young guy I just played golf with today. You should meet with him and help him out any way possible." So that's really how we met. He wasn't working the Scottsdale team. He wasn't networking. It was like a mercy meeting.
On the golf course.
On the golf course, over beers.
Those are the best meetings.
My first interview was on.
There's no better
those
meetings
18
than on the
holes
golf
at
course
Mesa Country
meetings.
Club.
Absolutely. And that's how we roll. Now with this guy, the other part with him is he didn't tell you, maybe because he's a little scared to say it, but I tried to not hire him. So I told him, go interview with CBRE and JLL and all the luxury residential firms. Go do that, and then if that's where you want to be, that's where you should be. If that's definitely where you don't want to be, I'll talk to you then. And
didn't like any of their pitches. Loved your pitch the best. And you sent me the paperwork. I think I remember you saying that you sent it not expecting anything back, and then I just sent it signed without even talking to you again.
I guess I'm in now.
Yep.
Yeah. That's awesome. Recognize the hat. We're really big about giving back to the community. Why don't you elaborate a little bit about how you guys do that as well?
Absolutely. So I'm Jesuit educated all the way through. So I'm Catholic grade school in Cincinnati. I went to St. Xavier High School in Cincinnati, which is basically the Brophy of Cincinnati.
Okay.
Jesuit backed. Creighton University, also Jesuit backed. They got a medical school down here now. I don't know if you know that or not. So there is a medical school down here.
Good to know.
If you want to go up there for undergrad, and you want to come down here for your residency or vice versa, they're making that happen. That's a little plug for my alumni. But anyways, a big theme for Jesuit educated people is men for others, or Carpe Diem. So and my folks taught me to always give back to other people, always to look out for other people. We've always been about, we're not into handouts, we're into hand-ups. And so that's kind of been a big theme of my life. And honestly, a lot of people have helped me out over time. I got great mentors. I got great people that have always looked after me. And if you can develop relationships with quality people, they need help. You need help. People in their network needs help. So I've always thought a lot of charitable giving, especially on the commercial real estate side, has been very shallow, right? It's not very thoughtful. It's just, we're going to spray some money around and make people think that we're not savages. But the reality is that none of it's strategic. And so I formed a board for my company of non-real estate people about 4 years ago. And part of it was, how do we mirror what we believe is wrong with real estate? And then how do we project what EIR is in a functional, healthy, fundamental way? So at one of the meetings, we came up with the Giving Pledge. So, I mean, it sounds like, we trademarked it, but we didn't. But the idea is that whether you work with us or you work with someone else, you should make them commit 10% of their commissions, their revenue tied to your relationship, that you can then direct to a charity of your choice or to your customer's charity of choice. So this EIR gives back. The theme is, you do a deal with us, let's say California Pools, who we represent them. Mm-hmm. Let's just say we collected a $40,000 fee from a deal we did with them recently. We went to them and said, hey, 10% of that revenue is yours. Yep. They had their employees vote on their favorite charities in town. The top charity won, and we stroked a check on behalf of California Pools to Phoenix Children's Hospital for $4,000, or ballpark about that number. Sure. So we're all about strategic giving. So whether it's the Little League team, or somebody's having trouble, or whatever cause you believe in, we empower you to take our money and put it in play where it matters to you. So that's our Giving Pledge.
Are there any qualifications or anything of the charities that you guys
there are no qualifications to date. There's been no no's up to this point. Okay. I think we lead off with the conversation if somebody brings up a charity that we would not get behind, which I don't know how many of those are. I don't know, Braydon, if you know a few, but I mean,
I'm part of a philanthropy group, so like our only qualifications are they have to be non-religious affiliation.
Yep.
And it has to be a local children's charity. The money can't go out of state.
Yeah. Yeah, so when I think non-religious, we're Catholic. We give money to the Catholic Church personally, but we would certainly not direct our money to a religious organization for sure. Yep. But that doesn't mean that we can't help out anywhere possible. And my wife and I are going to start a foundation at some point. We're going to call it Robin Hood or something, so we can actually set up a conduit where every dollar goes back out. You give money to all these charities, and there's people in real need. And if somebody's got a utility bill, you don't want to give it to some charity and then that charity gives $800 of your $1,000. You want to walk to that person who you vetted out as a good human and say, I got you. Yep. And I think that's what we're missing in our society now, is actually caring about the people and helping out people that are in need. So for me, I'm kind of gotten to a point where, you've hit the hierarchy of needs where I think financially I'm going to be okay by the grace of God. And now for me, it's how can I stir up real estate? How can I put pressure on the community to give back more? Yep. And then how do we protect as many people through real estate work as possible? I mean, that's probably my two focuses probably for the next 10 years, aside from my wife and my 4 kids and coaching and being involved, caring about our society. I think that's, for me, where it's all at.
Yep. Awesome. I know you guys kind of call yourselves the directors of real estate.
Yep.
Where's that kind of terminology come from?
Well, I don't know if my buddy Joe Carlin's listening to this podcast or not, but he probably will. So I have to give him credit.
Okay.
So when I was working for the firm that I was, one of our tenants was growing locally, and their CEO, Joe Carlin, didn't do a great job of managing his staff or his guests at his locations. So he and I got to know each other because I had to talk to him about how everybody should park, how
Yep.
everybody should behave outside the suite. And as I walked in, he's got a picture of Pete Rose diving headfirst into third base, that iconic picture of Pete Rose. So I was in there to rip him a new one. And I'm like, oh man, this guy's awesome. This guy's a good dude. So we got to know each other. He's the CEO of a fairly big pain group at the time, and they had local, regional, and national needs. Well, he liked me as well, or at least he tolerated me, and he still does. and basically, he's like, hey, we need help. We don't like any of the healthcare-focused real estate services companies in town. Can you help us? So I went to the guys I worked for and said, hey, this director of real estate platform, let's start doing it. They actually let me work with my buddy Joe,
Yep.
and then we basically started driving a real estate strategy for this company that was growing locally and then purchasing other practices nationally. So we would go do the due diligence for the current leases. We'd abstract stuff. We'd do strategy for extensions, new locations in Dallas, Nevada, Boise, you name it.
Yep.
So most commercial real estate firms, they refer that state by state. So CBREs work with somebody in New York City. They refer it to some junior associate in a cube who makes 4% of the fee, and then that's the kind of representation you get when it gets watered down and referred out.
Yeah.
We, as your director of real estate, show up everywhere. We spend $25,000 a year on CoStar to have the national look in,
Okay.
and we drive this strategy anywhere in the United States. Now, we also, if you're, let's say, moving here locally, we had a big company from Austin move here for like 20,000 square feet, so we offered the executives and all their team relocation services if they needed them.
Got it.
So that's kind of how we work. Now,
Did you help them find the space as well, and then also?
we did.
Okay,
Yep,
awesome.
we did. And like a Keller Williams has this model, but their model is they're either residential agents or they're commercial
Right,
agents,
yeah,
right?
you're
They're
not
not
both. Yeah.
they're not directing your real estate strategy. They've just decided, hey, if I got a guy buying a $1 million house, he's probably making a 5,000 square foot office decision. Let's
Yep.
make money on both. They're not focused on what can I do for you? What are your needs? And that's what I think has gotten lost in all these real estate people making so much money. They're putting their Audis on Instagram, right? Or they're projecting, hey, look at me drinking a scotch. Your customers don't care about that.
Right.
People that are starving in Phoenix don't care about that. All the people you drive past to the D-backs games that are homeless outside, they don't care about that. And we don't care about that either.
Yep.
So that's the scoop.
Love it. Brennan, give us some examples of some of the deals you guys have been working on.
Yeah. So right now, through the networking group, we've been able to. I got some deals done with Maids of Scottsdale, which was awesome. Matt Jackson, shout out to you. He gave me my first deal in the networking group.
Thanks, Matt.
So that was really fun, and that was like kind of the first deal I led by myself,
Cool.
Which was pretty cool. In the past, Brett mentioned California Pools. It's a big pool company here. We've done a lot of work with. We've worked with a local sports team in town as well, getting them some warehouse space.
Are you working with like a car company or a mobile detailing company or a
Car wash.
car wash?
Oh, yeah. And then car wash. Yeah. Bryce Miller Washworks. They have a location out in Mesa, and they're also implementing a new chemical business as well. And so they're going to need some warehouse space for that. So we're actively looking for a new car wash location for them, and then also warehouse space for the chemical business. So it's great, and it's cool in my business because there's so many different industries that need help.
Yep.
And so I also get to learn their side of the business as well, and can help them find their next space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
So it's great.
What are the 2022 like audacious goals for Everyday Investments?
That's a timely question. So I sat down the Young Bucks about a month ago and said, I'll see you in a month to talk about, what are your goals for 2022. So we have some pretty solid goals for each individual guy for the first quarter. I hate throwing out numbers, but we had a pretty good year. We had the best year we've ever had in
Good.
EIR, which means we donated the most money to charity in the history of our company. I would say that our goal is to probably be up, somewhere between 20 or 25% of what we've accomplished last year. But the real goal is to do stuff like this. The real goal is to hand out dough to charities of choice. The real goal is to make people decide why are they hiring who they do for their residential commercial real estate needs, and make sure you qualify who you work with and make sure they take the giving pledge, right?
Yep.
That's really what my focus is this year. But I would say we're set up for a pretty strong year. We got a couple more director of real estate clients. I hate to throw out certain names of people we work with in town, but they're pretty big. You're seeing a lot of consolidation of companies, so there's a lot of acquisition, there's a lot of private equity. We represent and work with a couple private equity firms, so we do all the due diligence work and all the backup for the acquisitions.
Okay. Can you elaborate on what that kind of entails?
Sure. We're helping a women's health group in Denver, right? So let's just say they're picking up a $3 million EBITDA business for an imaging company that's going to support their women's health group, right? So they have 7 locations. So my boy Henry over here gets to read every single lease, something I always used to have to do, and he abstracts all the leases, and then we put them in what's called a rent roll. So we put together that rent roll, and then we present that to the customer and say, hey, here's when the leases are expired, here's what you're paying, here's what the market rates are, what are you doing revenue-wise at each one of those locations, and then we have a call with them. And then we go over, are we keeping it? Are we extending? Are we just doing a lease assignment? So what most people don't realize, and this is actually a good nugget for everybody, and a lot of commercial real estate guys don't share this, when you are close to an extension, you're buying a business, if you don't get another 3, 5, or 7-year extension, and then you buy the business, that landlord knows you're never leaving. So you have given up all of your leverage to get free rent, to get back to market rent, to get dollars to rebrand. They know that you're buying the business and most likely the location. So when you're doing an acquisition of a business, you got to be out in front of it. So what we did is of the 5, 3 we were extending and 2 we were doing lease assignments. We negotiated LOI terms, letter of intent, non-binding terms, and signed deals on 3 of the locations, new layout of the space, rebrand, TI dollars, free rent, contingent on the acquisition of the business. So the moment we hit that deal, we got our lease assignments done of those 2 spaces. I hope the landlords aren't listening, but we're not staying. You should have handled yourself better. Stop being so arrogant. If you don't have tenants, you don't have cash flow. It's just something to think about. Anyways, the other 3 got 5 to 7 year extensions. They gave us fair deals because we got that look in via CoStar of what the market's doing.
Yep.
And we're going to rebrand those spots. And now they're looking in Eugene, and they're looking elsewhere, and it's rinse, wash, repeat on that strategy. The kicker is slowing people down, because when you're buying a $3 million EBITDA business, you're not thinking about your 7 locations. But once things go sideways, or after you acquire, the first thing you're thinking about is, oh God, we got to put $200,000 in this space to paint it, to carpet it, to rework it, to fit our operational flow.
Yep.
Our job, with 10 years of ownership experience on the ownership side, I can say, whoa, you need to do this in advance to get the best deal you can. So is that a good example, Henry? Did I miss anything there?
No, it was great.
That was awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Seriously.
Yep.
We've talked a little bit about the difference in commercial and residential and stuff, and I guess for me, my question to you is, what would you be investing in right now?
That's a great question. See, I'm a storyteller. See, when you're young, you just answer. I'm going to tell you a story, and then maybe try to give you information you can relate to your situation. So, my father's a mechanical engineer, super smart guy. Worked in our business, as I said. He's kind of the poor dad. He's a rich poor dad, by the way. My dad will never listen to a podcast, but maybe one of my siblings.
We're going to send it to him.
Exactly. Yeah. So he's a rich poor dad.
He's poor.
He's got a lake house. He's got a lake house in Georgia. All right, he's doing okay. But we go by all this real estate. He supported it a little bit, so he and I bought a few deals together too. Okay. And then, again, you guys were a little bit younger, but in 05, 06, things just erupted here. They went up 75, 80%. May sound a little bit familiar. Different story this time. We can talk about that later. But I call my dad to tell him that I'm rich. I'm like, hey, Dad, I'm up 75% on all these assets. And my dad, being the engineer that he is, he said, first of all, son, you're not that smart, which he's actually still tells me to this day every time I see him, which is, he's right, I'm not that smart. But he goes, hey, would you rebuy any of these assets right now with the amount of money you put down relative to the 8 to 12% return you penciled these for? And I hung up the phone, pissed off, and I rolled all the numbers, I checked the values, I did all the math, and they all had negative cash flow. So none of them made sense. Yeah. So I called my dad for about the 8,000th time in my life. I had to tell him he was right. And I said, so now what? He goes, well, you should sell. And so I didn't know it was coming in late 06, 07, but my dad's advice and him humbling me to stick with your math formula.
Yep.
I cashed out.
Okay.
I'm at the Sandbar, which you guys probably know the Sandbar, Desert Ridge, and the 101. But the Sandbar used to be at
I know
Shea
the
and
original
Scottsdale.
one. Yep.
Yeah, I was there. May or may not have danced on a box or two there. I had a couple Coronas, but
I think I dropped my parents off there a couple times.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
my
I was hanging out with your parents. Yeah, I was hanging out
I
with your
wasn't
parents.
getting at that, bro. Yeah.
I was hanging out with your parents. Yeah. So my buddy's a bartender there. I'm sitting next to two dudes. They're talking about building houses in San Antonio and Austin for, I don't know, 140 grand for 2,400 square feet. I'm literally writing all this down. They're chasing Walmarts and Targets where they're being developed, writing all this down. And so I basically get on a plane the next weekend, fly to San Antonio, and take all the money that we were about to make and rolled it into assets in San Antonio.
Okay.
Now, what I didn't know at that time, there's high property taxes there. So everything that was going on in Phoenix at that same moment,
It's almost like equal to your mortgage payment, right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
it's expensive,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, $500,000 house, your property taxes are like $8 or $9 grand. I mean, it's pretty legit. So, but what they don't do is they don't speculatively build there. So we were speculatively building here because our property taxes were low. There, the developer will never take that risk. They only build on demand because they can't carry the property tax portion of the investment. Now, I learned that a few years later. So have a great time in San Antonio, buy a bunch of stuff. I have one extra night. I go up to Austin. Believe it or not, I go to another bar. I'm on 6th Street having a great time. Meet some guy. He's like, hey, they're building out, near the TPC golf course. I drive out there the next day. I pick up 3 more properties. I'm literally calling my buddies like, hey, I think this is what we should do.
Yep.
They trust me, and by the grace of God, everything went well there. Okay? So kept all that stuff. Real estate's been steady there, right? It's not been like real up and down, but it's grown steadily. And back to this book, right? The Rich Dad Poor Dad tells you let somebody else pay off your mortgage. So in San Antonio and Austin, that's what's played out for me. There's been appreciation, but mostly I own real estate outright now because for 15 years somebody else paid the rent. Yep. So come back to Phoenix. I actually started working with GAT. Sold a bunch of bank-owned real estate with Jamie Bush. I don't know if she listens to podcasts or not either. I do know the Bosco family, and they've been great to me. But I sold a bunch of bank-owned real estate. You guys transacted a bunch of it, and I started to watch this thing happen where we had kind of hit the bottom, right? A bunch of bank-owned real estate flooded the market, so we started buying back here again. Now, I was still scared to death because I own a bunch of real estate in Texas. Everybody I knew was broke, right? It was sad. But when that thing hit in 05, 06, 07, it didn't save anybody, right? It was a really it was a bloodbath. And I still got scar tissue from it. And I've probably gotten out too soon even this time around because I don't ever want to end up in that situation. When you're selling bank-owned real estate and you got to show up and take somebody's keys from them, or you got to see that family move out, or whatever it is, it's something that I don't wish upon anybody. So, anyways, bought back here slightly, and I've kind of watched the market run. Yeah. So, my advice is probably the opposite of everybody else right now, which is, I've sold a majority of my assets. Okay. A majority of my net worth is in cash currently. People would argue that interest rates are low, and I think if you're buying your primary residence or something like that, and you got a locked in 2-3% interest rate, and that's where you want to be, and that's what you're going to raise your family for 5, 10, 12 years, I think you're fine. One of the things that we all missed is and on the commercial side, you got to realize too, I see all the builders going bankrupt because I'm running that big portfolio. Yeah. Well, builders didn't build here for like 4 or 5 years, right? So as that bank-owned residential real estate of 100,000 units drops to 20,000, 10,000 units, the builders couldn't build. They couldn't ramp back up quick enough. Right, there was some immigration policy stuff that was hitting, right? SB 1070, I think it was. Yep. That didn't help. That sent labor out of town, and these builders could not and still cannot build back to the balance of the MLS inventory and the new build inventory. And obviously, you got people that are migrating here due to tax policy or other reasons. They're ringing the register hard in Washington, California. They have no tangible feel for what value is in Phoenix at this time, if you ask me. Yeah, for sure. Locally, we're all getting priced out, and it's not a great feeling. But scarcity always makes us make really bad decisions. So I would vote for patience. I'm in a fairly cash position. Yep. I got 10% stops on all of my stock portfolio, and I'd like to see how these trillions of dollars that the government gave all socioeconomic classes, let's see how that gets digested, and then make some decisions. But I would be very careful unless I was putting a ton of money down on a rental property with a really nice interest rate to be doing much at this time. I know that's not that sexy. That's not what anybody wants to hear. But that's, when you're buying apartments on 3 and 4 caps, I mean, that's a pretty tough deal. And what happens? I'll ask you guys this. I mean, I was watching 60 Minutes. I know that's not where you're supposed to get all your information. But I was watching it Sunday night. You guys don't probably know what 60 Minutes is.
I watch it every Sunday night.
Yeah, exactly. There's a clock and
Right
it ticks
before
around.
Sunday Night Football,
There's a
baby.
lot of propaganda there, but they're saying 1 of 7 people that were in an office are going back to work. So 14% of people are going back to offices. What happens to the people that bought buildings based on 90% occupancy at $25 rates when they go down to 50% occupancy and the rates are 20? Well, I know because I saw it in 08, 09.
Yep.
They give their keys back. So I just feel like there's more opportunity ahead after there's a legitimate mathematical reset than what the opportunity is in front of us today.
Kind of segues into the next question. Where's this market going then?
Well, it's a great question. I think if the stock market pulls back, I think if interest rates go up, I think residential real estate values flatten out or go down.
Okay.
With scarcity, right, macroeconomics tell you supply and demand, prices will rise. And I would say that they will continue to rise this year. To the level they have in the last 2 or 3 years, I don't think so. But from the buyer pool that we're witnessing on the residential side, it's a lot of out-of-town people that really don't know where they're buying, have sold their house for 3 times more than what they thought it was worth, and they'll pick off anything here, and they're happy to be here, right?
And they're willing to go way over asking price
Correct.
because they got the money from their big sale or whatever.
Yeah, and it's tough. You know, you make a bunch of money here locally and sell your house. You're just trying to raise your family. It's not a very pleasant environment. We probably represent more sellers than buyers right now on the residential side, just because the buyer environment is not pleasant.
Oh, it's brutal
At all.
Yeah.
And we feel, and so, and then on the commercial real estate side, my local contacts tell me at some point multifamily is going to flatten out here soon, and there's going to be a correction. Industrial is hot because when you ship stuff, every once in a while we are going to ship stuff out of the ocean into docks in California. We're working on that. I know that. I know we can't comment further on that, but at some point, hopefully, America can ship in
a lot
there.
of stuff.
Yeah,
Right?
a lot of stuff in. But when you do, the cost of all the real estate near all the docks has gotten so expensive. There's a bigger argument to just load it onto a long haul truck, and basically they're turning the West Valley of Phoenix into the docks of L.A. And so I think industrial actually will continue to do really well, because land out there is inexpensive, the cost to build is still inexpensive, and really people have realized, why fight all the congestion and the traffic and the storage hassles near those docks when we can just ship it and break it down and ship it from a place like Phoenix. Office, I feel bad for people that own office. I mean, we're in a 40, 50,000 square foot building. I'm one of 10 cars there on a weekly basis. Retail, same thing. I mean, what you're seeing now that the tenant, the tenant's inability to get foreclosed on basically is passed. Now landlords starting to knock on the door and saying, "Where's my rent?" And if you own a small business in a retail location and you, let's just say, gross a couple $100,000 a year, and you owe the landlord $150,000 and your rent's another $8,000 a month, then there's going to be trouble for you. And then remember, retail prices will go down because it's tough out there. And then I don't know about you guys. You go to a place like Dominic's or Mastro's or you name it. I mean, the cost to have a steak and a bottle of wine now is uncomfortably outrageous, right? And
everywhere, it's crazy. I mean, even if you go to McDonald's, it's crazy.
Waterburger's $12. I wasn't gonna say. I was gonna start. You were in real estate, so I had to start with Dominic's Mastro.
I saw where you're going.
I was at Waterburger last week. It was $12.03 to get and you're looking around like, how are these people affording this? And I think something has got to come. But we've never in the United States digested trillions and trillions of dollars, unearned dollars in our economy. And so the first time in all of our lives, in your young lives, you're looking around and you're like, wow, nobody's earned anything, but they seem like they have a lot.
Right.
And that's usually...
And no one's working, too.
No one's working.
Right. You go into any business or whatever, and they're like, everyone's hiring or struggling to stay open because they can't find work. And it's like, okay, well, where did all these people go?
Yeah, it's a pretty big red flag. And this whole thing, like, oh, they're getting better jobs or whatever the case may be. I don't know how long that's going to be. But at some point, your rent's going to be due, your mortgage payment's going to be due. And the other thing is, I think work is good for people in general. No matter what work you do, you got to have a purpose in life, and so these people that have been sent home, they're afraid of COVID or whatever it is, I feel horrible for them, but at some point you got to do the pioneering American thing, and you got to get up like a savage and you got to go back to work and and get things done. So we'll see how that all plays out in the middle of this year. But I think patience pays off.
I would agree. I think that's a good point. You guys have kind of rebranded a little bit lately. What's with the new logo?
Well, when you go younger, you got to get cooler. You can't have a name of a company and a logo that you started when you were 23 years old and never thought you'd amount to much. So this goes back to I want to give these guys some of the credit, but the guys on my board were like Everyday Investments Realty as we started the deal off. It's a little bit of a mouthful, right? It's a lot, right? So
a little bit.
Yeah. And so if you're an executive town and you're on our board, does Everyday Investments Realty sound sexy and cool? Probably not, right? When I named it, when I was 24, I worked in real estate every day.
Yep.
I gave effort every day. We leased properties
I
every day.
invested.
Yeah, I invested, yeah, right? It was an everyday thing. There's probably a rap song tied to that. It's probably where I came up with it, right? It's an everyday thing. Anyway, so that's how it came to be. And as it grew, the platform grew bigger than the name.
Yep.
And so 3 or 4 years ago, my buddies who I've known forever, these guys are on my board, had to break the news to me to say, hey, man, you got to turn in an acronym or rename it. And that was a tough pill to swallow.
Yep.
Then they wanted to change the logo, tough pill to swallow. And so instead of me doing any of it, I let my industry expert buddies say, if we're going to be on your board, this is the clean logo we want. This is what we want your website to look like. You may be really experienced. You may be fairly successful at doing this,
Yep.
but you need to kind of polish the thing off. So basically, that's how the process started. So we went through the whole logo process. These guys were kind of coming into the fold, kind of on the back end of that. And I've never been I'm kind of a steak and wine guy and take care of people that way, or golf. I'm not a big gear guy. It's just not. I'm actually a little bit uncomfortable, right? Because it's my thing, right? I should be like, oh, yeah, but that's not who we are, right?
Yep.
I'm not the real estate guy that's like, But it is pretty comfortable stuff. Thank you, Mike Dominic. But basically we went that route. And these young guys, they want to feel proud of the company. They want to wear the gear. The people they're working with want to rock the stuff. And then for me, this whole gives back part of the theme.
I love that.
Yeah, and you can see on all of our stuff, we got USA, we got the American flag on the back of this. We're very proud Americans. We love our country. And with all the divisiveness going on, so why don't we lean into the community and why don't we lean into America? So that was kind of, what it was all about. And then we put this Be Savage on most of our stuff because we got to, as Americans, go back to being savages. Whether how you lead your family, how you go to work, how you lead in your community. We've gotten so sensitive and so politically correct, and I apologize for people that may offend.
Yeah.
Sort of. I really don't apologize, but
you really
I don't
apologize.
apologize. But the reality is we all got it. This country was pioneered by savages, and we got to keep evolving and growing. We got to take responsibility for our bad choices. We got to celebrate our good choices, and we got to get back to being Americans. And that's not Democrat, that's not Republican, that's not Libertarian. We got to get back to Americans. Americans take care of each other. Americans work hard. Americans give back to their community. And that's what we're all about.
It's one thing I love about the real estate industry is most people in this industry have the same mindset in that regard. It's they all pretty much type A people that are out hustling and doing their own thing and
absolutely
putting family and the country first. So I think that's awesome.
Amen.
You mentioned California pools. How else are you partnering with other big companies like that? What's kind of your strategy?
Great question. So a majority of our business comes in via referrals. So it could be referrals of prior business that we did. It could be maybe from the board that I founded. It could be companies that are growing. We are, like I said, kind of a steak and wine company. A majority of my business is relationship or former production. So there are some other big companies that we work with. Brennan mentioned one of them. A lot of them prefer, the one thing that's great about us is we're pretty discreet, right? So if you're working with CBRE or JLL or Keller Williams, like Keller Williams wants you to know that they represented Mike Tyson. If we represented Mike Tyson, we wouldn't tell anybody, right? Right. So same with on the commercial side. They want to leak out that they work for Fortune 500 companies, that they work with certain sports teams in town, whoever it is. But we work with several large companies in town. One's a big mattress company. We work for a restaurant company that's growing. We work for a tire company in town, or have in the past. And so there's different groups that we work in town, but we try not to scream from the mountaintops who they are. We're kind of the low-key group.
Yep.
So, but there's several. And the one that we're working with that I can say is my boy Joe Carlin's group out of Denver. And they are looking to actually erupt across the West to include Phoenix. And we look to work with companies like that who are started small, they've grown, they got a great product, and they're smart enough and humble enough to know they don't want to handle the real estate, right? We don't want to go in and pitch and beg somebody to understand they got real estate exposure, right? Either you get it or you don't. So we're looking for people that, want to just. I mean, I do what we do. Everything else, I find the experts and I pay them to do it. And I think that's good business practice in general.
I agree. This has been awesome. Thank you all for coming on. Any last thing you want to leave everyone with Everyday Investments?
I would just say that be a good neighbor, work your tail off, and require anybody you do real estate services work to at least donate 10% of what they make off of you and your referrals to the charities of your choice. And make sure you qualify who you're working with. Make sure you're working with good people. Now is the time to look after each other and make sure you're working with quality people. And I would wish everybody a healthy year. And I would hope that no matter where you're at with everything that's going on in our society, that you go take a walk or you go do some exercise or you go see a friend. A lot of people are struggling with a lot of things. I won't go too deep into that. It's startling to me how much unintentional consequences this virus has caused, how much pain people are in. And I think a way out of it is to get healthier and to love each other and to spend time with people you care about. So we appreciate the opportunity. You seem like a great young guy. I love working with these guys, and we're looking to help as many people this year as possible.
Love it.
All right, man.
Yeah.
Brendan, Henry, anything?
It matters who you hire.
I love it.
One of our favorite hashtags.
Yep.
Just same sentiments, just echoing that.
Be a savage.
Absolutely.
Yeah, be savage, be different.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
Stay tuned for another episode of Break It Down with Braydon, and see you guys soon. Thanks.